Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Sue, your 2022 Oakland mayoral candidate. Well, we're back open once again. And Oakland, are you feeling safe? Yeah. Other day I was in a conversation with a friend, and he was asking why he hadn't heard from me for a while. Well, I've been a little busy. Since the COVID, the criminal element has gotten a pretty good foothold here in the Bay Area, and we're seeing a lot of crime all over not only Oakland but San Francisco, South Bay, up in the Oakland Hills, Berkeley, everywhere. In fact, all over America, because the criminals have been emboldened with power, and that's because jails have closed. They're not accepting any, or law enforcement's not arresting anybody and putting them in jail. So what they're doing is a program that I called catch and release. So they catch them, they cite them, they release them, and then supposedly sometime in the future these individuals are going to come back to court and face the music, so to speak. But then we know that's not true because they don't show up. Right now we're having to deal with a lot of crime here in this camp because the criminals, one of the criminals that I dealt with 2 years ago has returned, and he was a very dangerous individual. He threatened the lives of many people back in 2019. In fact, he even threatened me. He went to his vehicle when I started to intervene, and he went and got a knife. I mean, we're not talking a pocket knife out of the car door. We're talking about a survival knife, and he came at me. And at the time, I had my gun on me. I drew and stopped him cold, where I didn't have to fire. He saw the gun and he stopped, but he mumbled a few things and then took off. I made a police report. It was on video. They captured him. They put him in jail, in prison actually, and then because of what's going on here statewide, they released him early. He was supposed to be away for much longer than the short period that he was. And now I'm having to deal with this individual again. And now this individual is even more dangerous because he's 2 Sundays ago he came back and he started threatening people all inside, up and down the camp here, because he came in with a group of criminals that are trying to take over this street, so to speak. And so if you've been following some of the things that I've been posting about the homeless and street crimes, you'll know that down in LA, that is all a man-created situation down there by people that are essentially NIMBYs, and they created that situation. And so what we're having to deal with here are these criminals that should be behind bars, but they aren't. And so they've become more dangerous because nearly every one of them has a gun on them. And so it makes for a very dangerous situation here. And the one individual that I'm dealing with right now threw gasoline, yes, gasoline, on 2 senior ladies. And we're talking senior ladies. One is 70 years old, the other one is in her mid-50s. So how are they going to do anything to an individual who is like 6'6" and nearly 300 pounds? And so this person is just a giant bully. He goes around and threatens people, and he intimidates people. Before, he used to pull out a knife. He no longer does that. He's using gasoline at this point. And so anyway, I'm also working on a GoFundMe to help the ladies, the senior ladies here. What we plan on doing is creating a safe styles of shelter and electrify it with solar electrical power for the winter so that they're much safer. These Conestoga huts are going to be actually the size of a tiny home. Square footage is 160, so there's room in there for the ladies to exist. Also, the advantage of this Conestoga hut is that we're putting enough layers to protect in the event that gasoline is thrown on a shelter like this, that it's survivable. It is survivable because the insulation, and we have double layers of aluminized wrapping to protect the interior from flames. And then it's also a reinforced wire all the way around, plus we have a solid door and real window on the structure. And so these are much more stable, much better and safer than a tent, because that's where these two senior ladies are right now. When they had gasoline thrown on them, and then the threat of being lit on fire, they just went running. Us guys, the males here in the tent, we grabbed what we needed to do and drove off this individual. But he comes back, like last night. He came back about 2:30, and he was antagonizing not only myself but also some of the folks here in the camp. And he did that for about 10 minutes before he rode off. So these are criminals that are hiding in plain sight because they have nowhere to go. When they were released from incarceration, they could not go back to the families that they came from because their prison records in many cases limits where they can actually go. And then family members who may have issues with that individual can't take them in, and so there's nowhere for them to go, and then they end up in the homeless camps here on the streets, and then they continue doing what they want because they don't have any kind of income. They get it by intimidation and by bullying people or stealing it from folks. And so these are things that happen out here on the streets, and we're seeing a real big uptick in that right here in Rangers Camp in East Oakland. We're working with law enforcement to remove a lot of these issues from the encampment. But all of this is because of the COVID shutdown, the catch and release program by law enforcement. Rather than incarcerating the individuals, they just simply cite them and release them, just like a car theft ring. There's a car theft ring that's been operating here for nearly a year. Excuse me. That the police and law enforcement know they've been here. I talked to law enforcement. They tell me who the individuals are by name. But now that jails are going to be opening up again, hopefully that they'll be rounded up in short fashion, and a lot of the dangers that are present right now get removed without anybody really being hurt. And so that's the main thing. Here in Oakland, we're seeing a lot of carjackings. We see people being robbed at gunpoint, just simply sitting and admiring a view of the bay in the evening. People getting carjacked on the street. I've had 2 carjacking victims down here for vehicles. So the crime is rampant, and Oakland has a very serious problem, along with Alameda County and all the cities and counties throughout the country. Here, especially here in California, with the catch and release program, the early release of incarcerated prisoners, and then I don't have a problem with them being released, but they need to be released to somewhere that they could actually safely be and that they're accountable, rather than throwing them to the wind and just letting them go, which is what law enforcement did. They just tossed them into the wind, and so now we have all these criminals that are literally in the wind, and they have no way to find them. Those that they simply cited and released, we know that they're not going in to show up in court, and so these are all things that have to be dealt with right now, immediately, for everybody's safety. We'll be right back.